1789. George Washington was literally outstanding in his field. He was walking through the fields of Mount Vernon, his Virginia home. Outstanding in his field. Ba-dum-bum-bum. I know, I love that joke. When Charles Thompson, who was the Secretary of the Continental Congress, rode up on a horse to deliver to George Washington a letter telling him that he had been elected President of the United States by the newly created United States Senate. This was great news for George Washington. He later wrote in a letter to a friend that I don't think he ever intended to go public that he was glad he had been given the job because he was tight on cash, and it came with a paycheck. He was also honored to serve his country, as he had done as the preeminent general during the Revolutionary War. But this honor created two problems for him. That 30 days from then, he had to be in New York City to be sworn in. The first was that he had to say goodbye to his ailing mother before setting off for that inauguration. She died before he was able to return from the inauguration. He did, by the way, go and say goodbye to her. The second problem Washington faced was trying to find a suit of clothes he could wear for the swearing-in ceremony, a suit of clothes that were made in the United States of America. When Washington became president in 1789, the majority of America's industrial and personal products were not made here. They were made in England. Full Employment Act, yes, keep those British working. One of the ways that England kept the American colonies under their thumb and kept their own economy humming was by outlawing American manufacturing of most high-quality goods, including fine clothing. Instead, in the years prior to the Revolution, the British East India Company, the world's largest transnational corporation, controlled the production and transportation of a whole bunch of different things, which included fine clothing. So while cotton and wool could be grown and sheared in the United States, those raw materials by law had to be sent to England to be made into clothing. So George Washington called up, well, he didn't have a phone. I mean, he got in touch with his trusted friend and former Revolutionary War General Henry Knox and said, General Knox or Henry, I need a 100% made in America suit to take the oath of office. Now, at that time, there was only one man in the entire United States who had been defying Britain and bootlegging fine men's garments. He lived in Hartford, Connecticut. His name was Daniel Hinsdale. And General Knox rode his horse from Mount Vernon, Virginia to Hartford, Connecticut with the measurements of the general because Hinsdale was publicly now, legally, making high-quality all-American suits and dresses. Washington got it. He understood. The manufacturing had to be at the core of our economy if we were to prosper, which is why he went to so much trouble to make sure that he was wearing an American-made suit for his swearing in. Thus, new President Washington asked his Treasury Secretary to look into ways to boost American manufacturing. So 2 years later, in 1791, the second year, arguably, of his Washington administration, his Treasury Secretary, Alexander Hamilton, presented his 11-point plan to build American manufacturing to Congress. By 1793, most of Hamilton's points had been made into law by Congress or turned into policy by either President Washington of the states. Hamilton's proposals, which included tariffs on imported goods and subsidies, government subsidies, federal government. I'm hearing conservative heads exploding all over America as they're listening. Alexander Hamilton, the first Secretary of the Treasury, proposed that we should identify, that the federal government should identify specific industries that needed to be jump-started and subsidize those industries. And George Washington agreed, and we did. And that laid the groundwork for making America the greatest industrial powerhouse the world had ever seen. In fact, 100 years later, more than 100 years later, Abe Lincoln was Well, no, actually, it was less than 100 years later. What, 3 or 4 generations later, but in the 1860s, Abe Lincoln was still doing this, subsidizing the railroads. For more than 200 years, we led the world in manufacturing. Being able to walk into a store, a big store or a small store, it doesn't matter, and buy something that has a label that said Made in America. It wasn't just some fantasy. This was the country that I grew up in. This is how it was in the United States until the Reagan years. Until the late, by the late 80s, it was all starting to change and changing big. And then it got even, and then, after Reagan, as we went into the Clinton years, it got even worse. I mean, we signed on to a series of so-called free trade agreements like NAFTA, CAFTA, SHAFTA, and signed the GATT agreements that created the WTO, the World Trade Organization. The result of these so-called free trade deals was that fewer and fewer American-made goods filled our stores. In just the, 13 years now? Since the Supreme Court put George W. Bush into the White House? We've lost over 60,000 factories in America. While Mitt Romney was running for president, his company, Bain, was dismantling a factory in Illinois and shipping it over to China. And to compound this insanity, right now, the Obama administration is in secret talks to draft a Trans-Pacific Partnership, another so-called free trade deal that will further damage manufacturing and jobs in America. But where the United States is failing at keeping jobs in manufacturing ashore, other countries are doing just fine. Thank you very much. Last week, the European, and this is the news, last week, the European Commission of the European Union agreed to impose punitive import duties, tariffs, taxes on solar panels from China, a move they made to protect the EU from dumping of cheap Chinese solar panels in Europe. The duties on the solar panels will kick in by June 6th, and odds are people in Europe are going to find that European-made solar panels, they make a lot of them in Spain, actually, and Germany, that they're going to be, cheaper than the Chinese. After the move was announced, the Chinese ambassador to the World Trade Organization immediately denounced it. He says, "There's a mistake. It will send," well, here's his exact words, "It will send the wrong message to the world that protectionism is coming," end quote. Okay, so I asked the question, what's wrong with bringing back protectionism? The Chinese are practicing protectionism. You can't sell an American car in China without paying a 22% import tax. What's wrong with protecting jobs in manufacturing domestically? I mean, right now, everybody in Washington is hysterical over the budget deficit. But the fact of the matter is that the budget deficit is nowhere near as big or as dangerous to America as is our trade deficit. I mean, for decades, our trade deficit has been just under $1 trillion a year. Just so far this year, as of March, it's $38.8 billion. And because we're not protecting our economy, and other countries are with both tariffs and VAT taxes that they can reverse on export, it's nearly impossible to find and buy American-made goods in U.S. stores. It's been 200-plus years since George Washington went out of his way to find and wear an American-made suit for his inauguration. Since Alexander Hamilton told us how to become an economically strong nation. It worked. We led the world for 2 centuries. But in the 33 years since Reagan took power, we've gone from manufacturing being over a third of our economy to it being about a tenth. We're back where we were when the British East India Company was running the show. Bring back the tariffs.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's time to say we need a manufacturing revolution. We need a new trade policy. And we need to bail out of these so-called trade agreements. They're nuts.